Legends and rock industry insiders alike can't stand him. Word on the street. Some of Dave Grohl's contemporaries have been less than enthusiastic about him, despite his legendary reputation and enormous fan base. Word on the street is that the lead singer of the Foo Fighters is deeply disliked by several rock figures. Today, we'll explore the surprising roster of artists that really dislike Dave Grohl, along with their reasons for doing so. From Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose. The early 90s were a time of great upheaval in the music industry. Conflict arose between Nirvana's raw, angst-ridden grunge rebellion and Guns N' Roses' glam-infused, hard-rocking extravaganza, representing a change in popular music's target demographic. The erratic Guns N' Roses leader Axl Rose had a secret Nirvana fandom that he kept buried deep within his heart. Admired Kurt Cobain's music and the intense energy of the Seattle band before the rivalry worsened. Still, the cultural tempest that was about to hit them was too much for admiration to bear. The disparity between the bands had progressed beyond mere aesthetics by 1992. Conceptually, it was deep. Nirvana personified grunge's shabby anti-commercial ideology, whereas Guns N' Roses stood for the established arena-filling rock machine. As Metallica and Guns N' Roses were ready for their huge stadium tour, the former asked Nirvana to open for them. The offer was quite clear in Dave Grohl's mind when he was Nirvana's drummer back then. We were asked to open for Guns N' Roses by Metallica before their huge stadium tour. However, Nirvana had no interest in becoming Guns N' Roses. It was an ideologically motivated rejection. Opening for the enormously popular GNR was something Nirvana was afraid would make them seem too commercial, something they had fought for years to avoid. From that point on, tensions escalated. Never one to keep back, Axl Rose started openly going after Cobain. He would yell out vicious insults while the show was airing, allegedly referring to Kurt Cobain as basically just an effing junkie with a junkie wife. The stage was set for one of the most notorious feuds in rock history by the personal, public, and theatrical hostility, which fed the gossip-hungry press. The flammable test bed was the MTV Video Music Awards in 1992. Nirvana, Guns N' Roses, and Courtney were all there, which is never an easy thing to have, as Dave Grohl recalled afterwards. Thus, escalating into a full-scale confrontation was a breeze. Axl was being yelled at by Kurt and Courtney. An angry Axl retaliated with his own yell. It was all drama and no substance. Nirvana staged a performance of Lithium amidst the mayhem. With an obvious surge of energy and an apparent desire to establish his supremacy, Grohl shouted "Hi Axl" into the microphone on multiple occasions, directly addressing GNR. A lighthearted jab that referred to the widening gap between arena rock and grunge. But rock's feuds change with time. The animosity subsided with the terrible death of Kurt Cobain in 1994. A bridge that had appeared unbridgeable 2 years ago was bridged as Guns N' Roses conveyed condolences. On The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, Grohl revealed that one of the initial phone calls he received following Kurt's death was from Matt Sorum. In his reply, he expressed his deepest apologies and wished the recipient well. That was extremely neat, in my opinion. Amidst a fight marked by egos and staged insults, there was an unusual display of kindness. Relationships that appeared hopelessly broken throughout the years eventually blossomed into friendship. A working friendship was finally formed between Grohl and Rose. I will share one story that illustrates their rekindled bond. Happened on 2016's Foo Fighters tour. While Axl Rose was nursing a foot injury, he got on stage. He borrowed Dave Grohl's stage throne, which the Foo Fighters also use. It was a subtle but significant act, showing that understanding and forgiveness could live side by side with recollections of animosity. A casual remark can start a fire that burns for years in the rock community, which is notoriously close-knit but extremely opinionated. Think Ian Astbury of The Cult. That moment came for Ian Astbury, lead singer of the hard rock band The Cult, when he found out that Dave Grohl, who was still trying to figure out who he was after Nirvana, had insulted the band in an interview. Years ago, Grohl told alternative press about going to a Cult event on a dare and how the whole thing seemed like torture. Astbury felt the jab as a sneak attack. Even though it came from an artist we respected, he subsequently confessed that we were not happy about it. Grohl was never seen as an enemy by the Cult. As a matter of fact, they held his musical abilities and the enormous cultural imprint he had made as Nirvana's drummer and Foo Fighters frontman in high esteem. However, this condescending criticism, emanating from an influential figure, touched a sensitive spot. According to Astbury, Grohl's comment might have been an act of naivete on his part. He speculated that he might have felt the need to make such a statement while he was still adjusting to life after Nirvana. However, he had zero familiarity with our situation. Sting remained. A provocative track titled Bring Me, the head of Dave Grohl, was mockingly demoed by the cult as they were getting ready to release their 2011 comeback album Beyond Good and Evil. Although it did not make it onto the final album, the title suggested that the insult had lingered with Astbury for over 10 years. It was a symbolic venting of frustrations as well as a playful reference to rivalries amongst rock and roll groups. The two bands avoided each other for a long time, even though they both played at the same festivals and industry gatherings. The Beatles maintained its status as a revered veteran act with an incredibly dedicated fan base, while Grohl and Foo Fighters solidified their position as one of the world's most prominent rock bands. The casual remark lost its prominence in the news, but it lingered in Astbury's thoughts. At Portugal's Nos Alive festival in 2017, destiny finally brought them together. On the bill, you could hear both the cult and Foo Fighters, who would later close the show. During their headline performance, Grohl made an unexpected gesture of goodwill by publicly nodding to the cult, which was both subtle and clear. The move suggested that the frontman might be willing to put the past behind him, according to sources familiar with the situation. Backstage, that feeling was validated. Grohl headed to the cult's dressing area following their performance. Standing before Astbury, he began with an approachable candor. "Whatever transpired between us in the past, I hope it is now in the past. I just want to say it's great to meet you." The sincerity caught Astbury off guard. For nearly 2 decades, he had carried the weight of an offhand insult that once felt like a deliberate shot. Now, here was Grohl, extending an olive branch without excuses, just a desire to move forward. The moment marked a quiet but meaningful end to one of rock's lesser-known feuds. It wasn't a dramatic reconciliation splashed across headlines, but a simple acknowledgement that both men had grown beyond the posturing of earlier years. In the grand tradition of rock rivalries, this one ended not with another lyrical jab or a barbed interview, but with a handshake backstage and a mutual recognition of each other's place in the rock pantheon. Noel and Liam Gallagher of Oasis have one of rock's most notorious sibling rivalries. Their explosive dynamic defined both their music and their public personas, and ever since Oasis officially split in 2009, the brothers have remained estranged, trading sharp insults through interviews, social media, and the occasional live performance. Fans have long speculated whether the band might ever reunite, but for decades the idea seemed laughably impossible given the depth of their animosity. In 2019, the stage at the UK's Reading Festival became an unexpected theater for the Gallagher feud. Foo Fighters were headlining and drummer Taylor Hawkins, ever the showman, adorned his kick drum with a giant photo of Noel and Liam Gallagher. It was a visual joke, one that immediately caught the attention of the massive festival crowd. As the band launched into their set, Hawkins and lead singer Dave Grohl engaged in playful onstage banter, weaving the infamous Gallagher tensions into the performance. Between songs, Grohl and Hawkins jokingly encouraged the audience to sign a petition urging Oasis to reunite, a nod to the rock world's enduring fascination with the Gallagher saga. The crowd, knowing the history, roared with approval at the idea of a reunion, if only for the spectacle. The playful jabs, however, did not go unnoticed by Noel Gallagher. Ever protective of his reputation and quick to defend his dignity, Noel responded publicly in his own inimitable style. At one of his shows, shortly after the Reading Festival, he addressed the crowd directly. "Is anyone going to sign that petition? Dave Grohl wants to get us back together. I hereby start a petition and break up the Foo Fighters. If the effing drummer from Nirvana wants to get Oasis back together, he can come up on stage and suck my..." The statement, laced with his signature sarcasm and contempt, perfectly captured Noel's persona. No nonsense, confrontational, and unwilling to be laughed at in public. His remark was not just a rebuttal. It was a declaration of independence from outside interference and, subtly, a reminder that he controls the Oasis narrative, not any external party, no matter how famous. The story didn't end there. In a 2019 interview with Radio X, Taylor Hawkins came to Grohl's defense, offering a candid perspective on the Gallagher dynamic. "Noel's a jerk," Hawkins admitted, unflinchingly, emphasizing the sibling contrast by pointing to Liam's ongoing success. "I mean, Liam's having a lot of success. He's doing 2 nights at the O2 Arena." Hawkins' comment underscored the enduring tension not just between Noel and outside figures like Grohl, but within the Gallagher family itself. A sibling rivalry where professional accomplishments and public perception constantly stoke the fire. This episode at Reading Festival was emblematic of the Gallagher brothers' place in rock culture, larger than life, endlessly quotable, and perpetually entangled in public drama. It also illustrated the Foo Fighters' irreverent approach to rock history. willing to poke fun at some of the genre's most explosive egos while engaging audiences in the spectacle. The visual gag of the drumhead, coupled with Grohl and Hawkins' playful jabs, created a cultural moment that celebrated both the absurdity and the intensity of the Gallagher feud. William Goldsmith, ex-Foo Fighters drummer. When Dave Grohl decided to form Foo Fighters following Nirvana's dissolution, he envisioned a band where he could channel his songwriting instincts and continue performing with the intensity that had defined his tenure as Nirvana's drummer. To complete his new project, he recruited William Goldsmith, the highly regarded drummer from the recently disbanded Seattle band, Sunny Day Real Estate. Initially, the collaboration held promise. Goldsmith enjoyed the early days of Foo Fighters, performing in smaller, intimate venues where the band could experiment and establish its identity. It was a creative period filled with excitement and camaraderie. However, as Foo Fighters' profile quickly skyrocketed, the experience for Goldsmith shifted dramatically. Pretty much everything after that, Goldsmith later recalled. As the band got bigger, it turned into a world domination thing that became really creatively stifling, and I grew tired of reproducing songs that I had no input composing. The transition from intimate gigs to arena tours introduced a rigidity and demand for perfection that soon began to take a toll on him. While Grohl's perfectionism was legendary and undoubtedly a factor in the band's eventual success, it created an environment in which Goldsmith felt creatively marginalized. By spring 1996, Foo Fighters had toured extensively, and they entered the studio to record their second album, The Color and the Shape. Here, Grohl's meticulous approach became particularly challenging for Goldsmith. Every drum track would be recorded and re-recorded multiple times to meet Grohl's exacting standards. I had to do 13 hours worth of takes, Goldsmith later recounted. It just seemed that everything I did wasn't good enough for him or anyone else. What began as a collaboration rooted in shared enthusiasm gradually turned into a frustrating and exhausting ordeal, leaving Goldsmith questioning his place in the band and his creative contributions. The breaking point came toward the end of the recording sessions. During a routine review, Grohl realized that while Goldsmith had moments of strong performance, the majority of his drumming did not align with Grohl's vision for the album. Without informing Goldsmith, Grohl re-recorded all of the drum parts himself. For Goldsmith, the act felt like a profound betrayal. To have his contributions erased without warning or discussion undermined not only his musicianship, but also his sense of professional respect. The situation was compounded when Grohl suggested that Goldsmith continue with the band as its touring drummer, a role that implied secondary status. There are some people that are hired as session musicians, and that's cool, Goldsmith said. But that's not why I set out to play music. That's not what I did it for. The incident marked the end of Goldsmith's tenure with Foo Fighters. He departed the band and was eventually replaced by Taylor Hawkins, who would go on to become an integral and beloved member of the group. Yet, even decades later, the experience left a lasting scar. In a 2017 interview with the Daily Mail, Goldsmith reflected candidly on his feelings about his time in Foo Fighters. He described Grohl as a playground bully, noting that he often felt like a verbal punching bag and that the process of recording left him creatively violated. The sense of betrayal lingered, revealing the darker side of working with a perfectionist leader whose drive for excellence sometimes overshadowed collaboration and respect. Courtney Love. The death of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain in 1994 left a profound void in the music world and also ignited a complex, often bitter feud between his widow Courtney Love and his former bandmate Dave Grohl. What began as mourning and mutual grief would gradually evolve into a prolonged struggle over legacy, music rights, and personal grievances stretching across more than 2 decades. The feud officially came to light in 1999 during a memorable appearance by Dave Grohl on The Howard Stern Show. When asked about his favorite Courtney Love song, Grohl replied without hesitation, "Teenage." He explained, "I know she wrote it," subtly acknowledging her creative input, but also perhaps unintentionally, establishing a line between himself and Love in terms of artistic merit. Courtney Love's response, when she appeared on Stern's show later, only fanned the flames. She claimed that Cobain had hated Grohl's guts, a statement that complicated the narrative of Nirvana's internal relationships and added fuel to a growing public feud. Tensions escalated in 2001, when Love blocked Nirvana's surviving members from releasing You Know You're Right, the final track Cobain wrote just 3 months before his death. The song, a raw and haunting reflection of Cobain's state of mind in his final months, had the potential to be a defining posthumous release. However, Courtney's move led to a legal standoff, with her filing a lawsuit to control Nirvana's legacy. Dave Grohl and bassist Chris Novoselic responded forcefully, labeling Love as a complete alien to Nirvana's music and success, who was trying to prohibit the remaining members of Nirvana from any commercial exploitation of the music they created. Their words underscored the tension between protecting Cobain's artistic legacy and navigating the legal rights of a widow versus surviving band members. By 2002, the feud had reached a temporary resolution, culminating in an amicable settlement. Both sides publicly agreed to move forward, but the peace was fragile. In 2009, Courtney Love reignited controversy by accusing Grohl of inappropriate behavior toward her and Kurt's daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. She tweeted that Grohl was carnally obsessed with Frances, sparking outrage and further public scrutiny. The claim shocked fans and critics alike, blurring the lines between private family disputes and public persona. Love later recanted, humorously blaming social media for the drama. "Twitter should ban my mother," she remarked, acknowledging the absurdity of airing such accusations online. The feud, marked by public statements, legal battles, and deeply personal accusations, eventually reached a turning point during Nirvana's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014. On that historic night, Grohl, Love, and Novoselic reunited to honor Cobain's lasting influence on music. In a symbolic gesture that ended over 20 years of tension, Love and Grohl embraced on stage. It was a moment that transcended past grievances, a public acknowledgement that despite legal battles, personal accusations, and decades of friction, the shared love and respect for Kurt Cobain's music could prevail. The Courtney Love-Dave Grohl feud illustrates the delicate intersection of artistry, legacy, and human emotion. It was a conflict shaped by grief, ego, and the complexities of fame. But it ultimately serves as a reminder of reconciliation and the enduring power of shared history. Their journey from public animosity to a heartfelt stage hug reflects not only the fragility of relationships in the shadow of legendary status, but also the resilience of those bonds when respect for the past triumphs over personal grudges. Kurt Cobain of Nirvana. When Nirvana emerged onto the Seattle music scene in the late 1980s, the band was far from the polished, iconic act the world would later know. The lineup was unstable, particularly when it came to drummers. The position seemed almost cursed, with a rotating cast of percussionists failing to cement a permanent presence. It wasn't until 1990 that Dave Grohl, a skilled and driven drummer from the DC punk scene, joined the band, bringing not only technical proficiency, but also a new energy that would help propel Nirvana toward legendary status. Grohl has been candid about his first impressions of the band. In a conversation with Q Magazine, he admitted that his initial encounter with Nirvana founders Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic left him bewildered. "I remember being in the same room with them and thinking, what? That's Nirvana? Are you kidding?" He recalled. At that moment, Grohl couldn't yet see the transformative musical force that Cobain and Novoselic represented. Yet beneath the surface, an undeniable chemistry was brewing. Grohl's powerful drumming melded seamlessly with Cobain's raw, anguished guitar work and Novoselic's brooding bass lines, creating a sound that would soon define an entire generation. Despite their musical synergy, the personal relationship between Cobain and Grohl was far from straightforward. In interviews with The Big Issue, Grohl described their dynamic as always a bit off, pointing to the dysfunctional atmosphere that often permeated the band. Cobain's erratic behavior and struggles with substance abuse only exacerbated these tensions. Grohl watched as Cobain's drug use intensified, culminating in dangerous near-death experiences that left a profound impact on him. In 1994, one such incident, Cobain's overdose, shook Grohl to his core. The emotional weight of seeing his bandmate teeter on the edge of life and death forced Grohl to erect emotional barriers between himself and Cobain, a protective mechanism born out of love, fear, and desperation. The final years of Nirvana were marked by a strange, almost surreal tension. In a 2011 interview with Howard Stern, Grohl reflected on the atmosphere toward the end of the band's existence. "I think at that point it was important that we take a break. I think everybody felt that way," he said, acknowledging the fractures within the group. Despite the growing distance, Grohl and Cobain maintained a deep, if complicated, one forged in the intensity of touring, recording, and sharing the spotlight of global fame. The emotional highs and lows of those years created a bond that was intense, volatile, and unforgettable. Tragically, the world lost Kurt Cobain in April 1994. Grohl, who had known Cobain for only 3.5 years, has often described their time together as encompassing multiple lifetimes in such a short span. In those brief years, they experienced the dizzying ascent to superstardom, the pressures of fame, the anguish of addiction, and the creativity that would forever alter the musical landscape. Grohl's reflections reveal a mix of grief, reverence, and the bittersweet recognition of having shared a rare, powerful chapter of human connection. For Grohl, Nirvana was more than a band. It was a crucible that forged both his artistry and his understanding of human complexity. While the world remembers Kurt Cobain as a tortured genius and voice of a generation, Grohl's memories highlight the intimate, sometimes painful reality behind the legend. What do you think about rockers who hate Dave Grohl? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this, and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.